it's Kim. So I am still recording these Biden and her transcripts with the audio. And that way, you can see for yourself how much he was struggling during his presidency. But, that's why they declined to charge him in the classified documents case. And, of course, all these books are coming out now and all these exposés, and everybody thinks they've discovered something new. Well, a lot of us already saw he was having trouble, but some of these things are just like really made public, like even CNN and MSNBC's having to like acknowledge that he had some issues, but whatever, and of course they're blaming Jill and the others around him, but whatever. Let's go on. I'm going to try to get these knocked out today. There's about an hour and a half left, so that'll be, 3 videos. Let me restart my timer, and that way, or actually start it, and that way we can just get them move on, get them recorded, get them out of here, because I'm just doing a lot of these videos out of curiosity. It's just, fascinating to me, I guess, that we had a president that was his age struggling, and you can say that now, everybody's saying it, so whatever, you have to admit that they put him up there. I mean, I know he ran for president several times, so whatever. But when he finally got in, I mean, he was almost like too old to function. But if you think about it, most people retire at 65 years old, 67 and a half sometimes, I guess, depending on Social Security or something. But, we have people in office pushing 80, 90. I think Dianne Feinstein, whatever. She was like 95 when she passed, and she was still a member of the Senate. So that tells you the state of our government. We need some fresh blood in there. But anyway, let me get this started. Get going on this. I've talked enough. I'll talk later. Anyway, let me start here.
When you, for example, I believe you had some meetings at Chambers Road when you were working with Mark Swanser on the book Promise Me Dad. Would you meet with Mark in this room or somewhere else?
I'd probably meet with this room or in the living room. Walk in and walk straight. It's nice to get out the back.
Is that also on the main
floor? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So speaking of Promise Me Dad, I think we talked a little bit about that book yesterday, but I had some more questions for you about it.
Sure.
So Mark, as you probably know, Mark recorded his conversations when you all met to talk about the book. He made recordings of those conversations, and we have some of them. In some of the recordings, you spoke to him about wanting to gather some materials from your time as vice president that you could use as reference, and you specifically talked about gathering notebooks that you had written in. Do you recall trying to collect those notebooks that you could use them when you were talking to Mark?
Not specifically. Look, when I was writing a book about how the family responded to somebody who was dying. And so if Bo had just gotten a new diagnosis on something, where was I? Was I in the country? Was I, what was I doing at the time? And this is when I was vice president as well, because he was diagnosed when that occurred. So that's the context in which I would look. And I actually got the book, and I started to look through it. And I haven't seen it in a long time. And there are connections to a certain diagnosis and where I physically was, and what my thinking at the time was about what I should or shouldn't be doing going forward. It wasn't about it was more like having a calendar in front of you. You know, like if your wife said, why don't you write a book about how we met and where we met and what was. Well, you want to know, let me see, when we meet. I remember the day I met, the 9th, the 6th of June, anyway. But my point is, you know, it was more to give me context, writing about it. Because I have to, it won't be fun. It was a very, very, very hard book to write.
Yeah. We understand. Having read it, that makes sense.
Well, you know, if you read it, you know, there's some references to where I was, as opposed to anything having to do with where I was. That's why I think about it.
Okay. Do you know where your notebooks were in the time period immediately after your term as vice president?
No, but I think what they did, they gathered up my notebooks, and I think they were in drawers in this room.
In this room in tab 13, the first level office?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure they're all in one place, but I think that's where they would mainly be, because there was this, I walked in, the fireplace in the middle of this room, and we went left, we walked through a little hallway, and went into what was a living room, more formal living room. But you passed a little alcove that had file cabinets. I mean, it had, I think it had bookcases and, you know, drawers beneath. But my guess would be there or in the bookshelves. I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. I want to ask you, Mr. President, about a meeting that you had with Mark in February of 2017. So you were meeting to talk about things that you were working on in the course of writing the book. So you had just ended your vice presidency about a month earlier. And at least according to your schedule, on February 16th of 2017, you were scheduled to meet with Mark at Chambers Road. And he recorded the meeting. And so based on his notes, it appears that you talked about covered a lot of ground during that conversation, including some very difficult emotional subjects, as you referenced. And then at one point, and I'm giving you this as context for the question I'm about to ask. At one point, it appears from the recording that you were speaking to him about meetings you had as vice president. There was a meeting about Iraq that you spoke to him about. And in that meeting, according to what you said, so this was one answer, the question came up of, will we ever see a unified Iraq in our lifetime? And in talking about that to Mark, you then made a comparison to Afghanistan. And you told him the story of the fact of the memo, the handwritten memo that we just looked at. And you said that you wrote the president the memo, and you told the president that the day we left Afghanistan would be the same as the day before we arrived. And in the course of explaining that memo about Afghanistan, you said to Mark, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs. And so you can imagine, we are curious what you meant when you said, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs.
I don't remember. I'm not supposed to speculate, right?
Correct.
Okay, well, I don't remember. May have been. I just don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember telling Mark about the handwritten memo that you had written to President Obama?
I probably did. I don't remember specifically, but my guess is I may have done that.
Okay. Do you remember telling him, I just found all the marked classified stuff downstairs? Telling Mark. Do you remember saying that to him?
No.
Okay. Do you remember actually finding any classified stuff downstairs?
No. The only thing I can remember is I wanted to be clear to him that I didn't want what he just heard me say the memo to Barack, you know, it wasn't a top secret thing or there's, I didn't want any of that mentioned, it was confidential. Not confidential in the classification sense, but don't write about that. That's off the record. That's not something I want to be talking about.
At this point in time, you know, around a month or so after you left the vice presidency, were you still in the process of going through your stuff at CBR to see what was packed where and where everything was?
Well, I don't specifically remember, but I can't imagine not. Just drop all these boxes in a library, boxes in the hallway back to the garage. A lot of stuff in the garage itself, boxes piled up. And my problem was, where the hell's all this stuff going? You know, I mean, we're just taking up a lot of room. And but it wasn't so much I was looking for anything. It was like, well, what do I clear out? What do I get out of the way? It's in near a hallway, or it's in a garage, or it's in, you know, in this library. It was more in that context I can recall thinking about what was in boxes.
Okay.
Not like I'm looking for something, like I'm trying to compile things. Just what they pack up, what's here.
I want to see if there's anything else, any other things that you remember about this day. And so the schedule shows that you had an appointment from 8:30 to 9 a.m. Do you know what that would be referring to?
Yeah, I had operated my shoulder, and it was a workout schedule.
Okay. And then from 10 to 11, you had a scheduling meeting at the house at CDR with Steve Richetti. Do you recall anything? I expect not from that particular meeting.
No, but that wouldn't be unusual in the sense that they were the day-to-day people like you see walking in and you know, but that, you know, just what's going on, kind of thing. What's the day look like?
And then you had lunch at the Four Seasons Hotel at Georgetown.
I eat there all the time. But that Four Seasons. Who that lunch?
Actually, I'm not sure.
I have no idea.
You'll have to figure that out.
I don't remember.
And is there anything that you remember about what you were doing at the house before your meeting with Mark that day, which would have been in the afternoon? It started at 3 o'clock. According to your schedule, it could have changed based on events.
Had I already decided who I was taking the pen with me, or that all been settled by this time? I don't remember.
You mean which people
Yeah.
were going to work with you at Penn? I don't know the answer.
I don't remember. Because there were discussions that were going on, like, you know, do I hire Tony to come on? Do I hire so-and-so? Will they provide? How much will they pay so-and-so? So, you know, to be a professor, that kind of thing. But, you know, the mechanics of what I'd be doing in Penn and who I'd be able to take with me. But I don't know that. I mean, that was one of the things in this time period I'm trying to work out. That right there. I'm out of vice presidency. I'm now going to Penn, right? That stuff they sent to Penn, this stuff from Penn. I don't remember. I'm not at my time.
Well, perhaps I'll ask you another question,
Sure.
Mr. President. You said, well, I think we talked yesterday that in the basement of Chambers Road, you had the office that you used there. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm more of a combination of family room, meeting room, television room, staff room. I mean, it was, you know, it just, I'm a frustrated architect. And, I wanted to set it up so it looked nice. And, I was even talking about in the swimming pool, out there, kind of thing. So what are you doing? What are you talking about? Stop. And, but it was in the context of making the place look nice and livable, feel like home.
Okay, and you said to Mr. Zwanter, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs. What I want to try to understand, in February of 2017, are there any other places other than Chambers Road that you could have been talking about when you said that?
No.
Yes.
Chambers Road residence, I'm out of West Sheffield's residence, right?
Yes, you had moved out more
And
than
all that stuff hadn't been sent to my garage floor. Delaware had it. You know?
What we know, Mr. President, is that the movers came to the Naval Observatory on January 7th and packed up your stuff and moved into Chambers Road that same day.
Gotcha. Nothing moved to Wilmington. There's only one of the residents I had. I visited the lake.
Right.
It's no lake, it's a pond. But, okay, no, I can't think of anything in any other place.
And I guess looking at the evidence taken together, one simple theory, and I'm just going to ask you if you have anything you want to add when I explain this theory. If the answer is no, the answer is no. One simple theory would be that when you told Mark Swanitzer in February 2017, when you were talking about Afghanistan, that you just found all the classified stuff downstairs, what you meant was you just found all the classified documents about Afghanistan that were later found in your garage in the lake house. And so we're trying to understand if that's what you meant or not. And I understand you've told us you don't remember, but our question is really if there's anything else, any other memory or thought you have on this that you want to share with us as we try to make sense of the evidence.
Other than, only thing I could think of is I was referring to him that I knew of the president, the memo I wrote to the president, didn't want that used, right?
Okay. And I think we covered this at the beginning of our conversation today, but well, actually, we talked about the incident with Mr. You said you were told that you had given stuff to Mr. You didn't know, you don't remember that, and you didn't know what those documents were.
No, I just know anything that was so clearly marked confidential, I just couldn't return it, get it out of here. That's what I know. And I was telling the team that that's what I would do with it. And they said, well, yeah, was your body guy for a while. He remembers you saying to him, boom, return it.
So in February of 2017, when you had this conversation with Mark Swanitzer, I believe that Mr. was still your body guy. I'm trying to get a sense of if you had found classified documents at that time, what would you have done with them? Who would you
I would have given it to him to get back to the, to the agency.
Okay. Is there anyone else that you can think of that you would have?
Well, if my former chief of staff was sitting talking to me, I handed it to them, but usually it was a staff responsibility to return this stuff.
Okay.
So it wasn't like it was, call my chief of staff or the head of farm relations committee.
Okay. I want to look at a few more documents.
Sure.
So if you could
It's
go.
kind of neat room with
Beautiful.
the sun in there.
Mark, before you move on to the specific documents, I'd like to ask a couple follow-ups. So I wanted to follow up on something that you said a couple of minutes ago, Mr. President, where you were recalling that I think you said they gathered up the notebooks and put them someplace referring to the Chambers Road residence. And I just wanted to ask who would be the they?
That's not what I meant. The notebooks would come in a box, drop somewhere. There's notebooks in the hallway, living room, all over. I mean, not notebooks, but boxes. So I'm gonna be living there, so Phil said, clear this place out. So what I probably did is go through and found boxes that had notebooks in them. I gathered the notebooks up and I put them in basically one place, and I think they were put in the library in that indentation I referenced. And, but that's my recollection.
Okay, thank you.
You said that if you had found classified documents at this point in February, if you would have given them to, or another staff
Yeah.
member,
I would have gotten rid of them. I would have gotten them back to the source.
and why?
Because I was gonna keep them for anything. I had no purpose for them. And I think it'd be inappropriate for me to keep clearly classified documents. Now, if I had written notes in my book, they're my notes, they're my property. But that document is not my property.
And was it your understanding after you left the vice presidency that, at least for marked classified documents that belong to the government, that you were not authorized to have those at your house after you were vice president? Is that your
I
understanding?
didn't think of it that way. I just thought of what would I need them for, and I had no authority to have them. I mean, why would I look? So, I mean, just a continuation of a 8-year habit of returning classified information to a source. I don't think it was conscious, like, oh, wait a minute, I'm gonna change my policy now. I'm no longer vice president. Why would I keep them? And anyway.
Okay, but I think it would be helpful for us to understand. I think with respect to your notebooks that you wrote by hand, you view those as yours,
They are mine.
and you were authorized to have them.
And every president before me done the same thing.
And I'm not arguing with you
I
about that
want to
right
make sure
now.
we're on the same page.
Well, I'm not meaning to address that topic right now. I just want to make sure that you're not making the same claim about a marked classified document that was created by the United States government. You're not saying that was mine, I could have that if I wanted.
I never made that argument. I don't know if that argument's legitimate, but I never made that argument. And I never responded that way intentionally.
Okay, that helps me understand where the line is for you. So let's look at the documents that I referenced earlier. If you could go back to binder 2, and if you turn to the second tab there, it says facts first on that tab.
Okay. You got one like Carol. That's a compliment. I don't mean that. That's a lot to put this together.
Understood. I'll wait for everybody to get there. I think we're mostly there. So this is what appears to be a red folder with handwriting on it. And by the way, Mr. President, the next few documents I'm going to go through with you were found in your garage at the lake house. I'm telling you that for context. Do you recognize this folder?
No.
How about the handwriting? Is that your handwriting?
It looks like my handwriting.
And the phrase facts first, does that have any significance to you?
No, I was trying to remember, I mean, when I saw that today, I didn't know whether I related to something or it was just me saying, I don't know. Was there a document facts first? I don't know.
As I said a minute ago, this folder had several documents related to Afghanistan from 2009 in it. Do you know anything about how this folder and those documents got into your garage?
No, other than they must have been taken when I was vice president from the vice president's residence or the vice president's office to the, where was did I have the pen office yet? I think either to the pen office or to the residence in Wilmington. That's the only thing I can think of.
There were also documents from the Naval Observatory, or materials from the Naval Observatory that were moved to Chambers Road. Is that
Okay.
Is that your? I'm asking actually. That's a question. You know?
I'm sure there were. I don't know. My problem was I never knew where any of the documents or boxes were specifically coming from or who packed them. It just I get them delivered to me. And so this is I'm at this stage in 2009. Am I still vice president? Yeah, okay.
So it looks like you're flipping ahead, which is great because I
I'm
want.
sorry, I thought that's you wanted.
No, you're fine, Mr. President. If you could flip to tab B7, I'm actually not going to go through all of these with you today.
Okay.
But B7, there, the first page there just says tab 1, and then the second page, which is, it ends, the base number is 82. I want to make sure we're all looking at the same document. The subject.
First one is
the title says
top secret. You might comment. It says Office of Director of National Intelligence, Al Qaeda allies pose global threat to U.S. interests.
we're looking at the same one. Mr. President, there's some lines underlined in the first paragraph, and there's a handwritten note in the margin. Is that your handwriting?
U.S. question mark?
Yes.
In the margin?
Yeah.
I underline documents, and that could be my writing. I can't swear to it.
Okay. To give you some context, this document was attached. There's a memo from the National Security Advisor to the President in advance of the National Security Council meeting, and this was an attachment to that memo. And so my question is, at least when you had copies of materials like that were your copies, did anyone else take notes on your copies of memos that you had as briefing material?
Not simultaneously, but if I turn it over to my National Security Advisor, and he could put those on, but not really.
Okay. You mentioned the markings at the top. It says top secret. Any of the other markings, do you recognize those or know what they refer to?
I'm sorry, what page you on, Mark?
I'm sorry, I'm on the it's page number 18, it's the first page of this document.
So the marks you mean the underlining?
Sorry, it says.
Oh, I see.
It's top secret,
I see.
comment,
Yeah.
Do you recognize any of those particular?
All I had to do was see top secret. I don't remember human intelligence comment. FISA. No, I mean, other than all I had to see was top secret.
Okay. You recognize those as classification markings, I assume?
Yes.
And you have referred a few times today to things that are clearly marked classified, and I want to make sure I know how you're using that. As far as you are concerned, is this document clearly marked as a classified document?
Yes.
Okay. If you then flip to document tab B13-2. This is a couple of paragraphs typed up, and at the top it says notes from a meeting on September 29th, 2009, then has a time. It indicates that it's about Afghanistan and Pakistan. For context for you, Mr. President, there was a principals committee meeting about Afghanistan and Pakistan on this day. And I can see that you're reading what's typed up there. Do you recognize this sort of vignette that's typed up as something that you recall happening during a meeting relating to Afghanistan back in 2009?
Look, the debate was McChrystal and company that if somehow we defeated Al Qaeda and killed bin Laden in Pakistan, we still have the same level of commitment that McChrystal was asking for to defeat the Taliban in Afghanistan. The answer intelligence state defense was yes. Okay, I don't know. That's a question that asked. What was the question?
Do you remember this exchange that is documented here?
Not per se, but it was a generic exchange. I remember. The debate related to whether or not Pakistanis were got rid of bin Laden in Pakistan. And never asked questions from defense. He's asking what's his name from Texas, who's Secretary of Defense? Al Qaeda killed bin Laden in Pakistan. We still have the same level of commitment that Crystal was asking for to defeat Taliban against the book. The answer intelligence state and the defense gave was yes. In other words, this was, if in fact Al Qaeda is defeated and Laden is gone, we still be making a major investment in Afghanistan. And apparently, the State Department, Defense Department both said yes, we had the same level.
Okay, let's move on to
Now, were
B14.
these notes written like, they're typed like this?
They were typed like this in the folder that was found in the garage. Do you remember anything about how this document was created?
No,
Okay,
because I didn't type anything.
fair enough.
I'm not because I know I'm embarrassed, but more than anything I typed. So it may very well be that whoever my national security advisor in that meeting, one of the small group meeting, was asked that question. This is he or she recorded that.
B14-1.
All right, I'm gonna stop this here because we're about 30 minutes in, and then I'll keep going because it was about basically an hour, maybe 58 minutes or something like that, just like here on the time. So we are on page 51 of 99, and we're gonna start right here where it says Mr. Quickbomb in just a moment. So I'll get these recorded and put up. Hopefully they sound okay. I don't know. That room sounds very muffled. The one they're in, and then my speaker sounds like too bassy or something. So I don't know. I'm trying, but I'm doing this more out of curiosity. But anyway, I will talk to y'all later. Bye.